Welcome to Style and Confidence, where transformative coaching meets personal styling for business success. I'm your host, Claire Silk, a transformative life coach and a personal stylist, passionate about helping women like you align your inner worth with your outer expression. Each week, we explore how to build lasting confidence from the inside out, so you can show up as your most authentic, empowered self. Whether you're looking to break through limiting beliefs, build authentic confidence and a winning mindset, or create a wardrobe that truly empowers you, you are in the right place. Get ready to transform your relationship with both your mind and your style. Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Style and Confidence, where we explore the connection between personal style, confidence and business success. I am so excited about today's episode. The Met Gala is a major event in any fashion calendar, and so hot on the back of this year's Met Gala, today we are diving into a fascinating aspect, dress code theory, specifically examining the dynamic between formal and casual in our clothing. This is a topic I had wanted to cover, and this year's Met Gala theme was the perfect opportunity. The theme this year was Superfine, Tailoring Black Style. It brought renewed attention to the artistry, cultural significance, and psychological impact of formal tailoring traditions. From Billy Porter's impeccably structured tuxedo ensemble to Zendaya's architectural silhouette that reimagined classic tailoring with a beautiful contemporary flair and remained feminine. The gala showcased how formality in dress continues to evolve whilst maintaining its power to command attention and respect. Zendaya's look was my personal favourite, and women like Rihanna and Sabrina Carpenter showed us how you can take a dress code and still make it your own, ensuring that it remains authentic and a true expression of yourself and your personality, clearly representing your personal brand. Since the pandemic, dress code expectations at work have shifted a couple of times. When I first entered the professional world in early 2000s, there was a clear expectation of formal business attire in many industries. Then we all moved home in lockdown, and many embraced the nice top for Zoom idea. And now we are seeing a return to more formal looks as we return to the office and look to our wardrobes for more excitement than a pair of leggings can give us. Yet there's still this fascinating tension. Even as we've embraced more casual dress in many contexts, there remains a persistent understanding that sometimes formality matters. That tension between formal and casual and the psychological implications of navigating it is exactly what I want to explore today. From the rich historical foundations of black tailoring traditions that inspired this year's Met Gala theme, to the cutting-edge psychological research on how clothing formality affects both how we're perceived and how we think and perform. So here's what we'll cover today. First, we'll explore the historical roots of superfine as a concept in black style history. I'm such a geek. I just love the historical origins of fashion. But it's funny, as generally I hated history subject at school. Next, we'll examine what psychological research tells us about the impacts of formal versus casual dress. Then we'll analyse how cultural dress code expectations have evolved over time. And finally, we'll discuss practical applications, how to strategically use elements of formality and casualness, if that's a word, in your everyday wardrobe. Whether you're deciding what to wear to an important meeting, trying to understand changing workplace norms, or simply curious about the psychology behind your clothing choices, today's episode will give you fresh insights into the powerful language of dress codes. So let's begin with the historical foundations of superfine, the concept that inspired this year's Met Gala theme and has deep roots in black style history. The term superfine refers to both a quality of fabric and an approach to dressing that emerged as a powerful form of self-expression and cultural resistance within black communities, particularly in the post-Civil War era, through the Harlem Renaissance and Civil Rights movement. During times when black Americans faced extreme discrimination and dehumanization, impeccable tailoring became more than just fashion. It was a declaration of dignity, humanity and self-respect. Dr. Monica Miller documents in her book, Slaves to Fashion, Black Dandyism and the Styling of Black Diasporic Identity, this tradition of meticulous attention to tailored clothing emerged as what she calls a sartorial philosophy. When society attempted to deny black individuals full personhood, the precision of perfectly tailored suits became a form of visual resistance, a way of asserting one's humanity and worth in a hostile world. She establishes Black Dandyism as both an aesthetic and political construct. Dandyism is an exuberant attention to dress. Miller said another definition is dressing wisely and well. She described Black Dandyism as a strategy and a tool to rethink identity, to reimagine the self in a different context. Historical figures like W.E.B. Du Bois, who was known for his immaculate three-piece suits, understood this power intimately. Du Bois wasn't just dressing formally because it was the standard of his time. He was consciously using his appearance to challenge stereotypes and command respect in spaces that were designed to exclude him. Similarly, writers like James Baldwin and artists like Duke Ellington developed distinctive formal styles that were simultaneously expressions of personal identity and assertions of cultural pride. What's particularly fascinating about the black tailoring tradition is how it often incorporated creative twists on European formal wear standards. Wider lapels, bolder colours, more dramatic silhouettes, creating something that acknowledged formal traditions whilst transforming them into something uniquely expressive. These weren't just adaptations of European style, but innovations that influenced broader fashion trends across America and beyond. By the 1970s, this tradition had evolved into what became known as Black Dandyism, a style movement that embraced formal elements whilst incorporating bold colours, patterns and accessories that celebrated black cultural aesthetics. This approach balanced respectability politics with jubilant self-expression, creating a distinctive formal style that continues to influence fashion today. The Met Gala's choice to celebrate this heritage brought these historical traditions into contemporary conversation. We saw modern interpretations that honoured this legacy whilst bringing fresh perspective, from structured velvet tuxedos with dramatic proportions to architecturally tailored ensembles that played with gender expectations whilst maintaining formal precision. What connects these historical traditions to today's expressions is the understanding that formality in dress has never been merely about following rules. It's about harnessing the power of precision and attention to detail to communicate something meaningful about identity, dignity, and cultural belonging. This understanding gives us important context as we examine what psychology reveals about the impacts of formal versus casual in our clothing choices. Now that we have a little understanding of the rich historical context, let's examine what psychological research tells us about how formality and casualness in dress affect both perception and performance. One of the most influential studies in this area comes from psychologists Michael Slepian, Simon Ferber, Joshua Gold, and Abraham Rutchick. Their research demonstrated that wearing formal clothing actually enhances cognitive processing and abstract thinking. Participants who wore formal business attire performed better on cognitive tests measuring abstract processing than those dressed casually. The researchers concluded that formal clothing creates psychological distance, which promotes more abstract, big-picture thinking. This finding has fascinating implications. It suggests that when we need to think strategically or solve complex problems, wearing more formal attire might actually enhance our cognitive capabilities. It's not just about how others perceive us, it's about how clothing formality changes our own mental processes. Building on this, Adam and Galinsky's research on enclothed cognition, which I've spoken about a few times before, suggests that the symbolic meaning we attribute to certain clothing affects our psychological processes when wearing them. In their famous study, participants who wore lab coats that they had been told belonged to doctors showed increased attention and performance compared to those wearing identical coats they believed to be painters' coats. Applied to formality, this suggests that when we put on clothing we associate with competence, authority and precision, like tailored formal wear, we may unconsciously embody those qualities more fully. And from a perception standpoint, Leonard Bickman's classic studies from the 1970s demonstrated how clothing formality dramatically affects perceptions of status and authority. In one experiment, researchers dressed in varying levels of formality, from casual clothes to business suits. They asked pedestrians to comply with unusual requests. Compliance rates were significantly higher when the requesters were formally dressed, even though they had no actual authority. More recent research by psychology professor Karen Pine found that participants rated individuals in formal business attire higher on traits like confidence, success, flexibility, and earning power compared to those in casual clothes. Importantly, these judgments happened within milliseconds of first sight. This is before any interaction occurred and they were completely subconscious. What's particularly intriguing is that these formality effects appear to operate across cultures, albeit with varying intensity. Dr. Caroline Mayer's cross-cultural research on clothing perception shows that while the specific elements that connote formality may differ between cultures, the association between formal dress and perceptions of confidence and authority remains relatively consistent worldwide. However, fashion psychologist Dr. Dawn Caron notes that context matters enormously, and as ever, so does dress code. Where casual dress is the norm, someone in formal business attire might be perceived not as authoritative, but as out of touch or unable to read social cues. The research also reveals interesting gender dimensions to formality perception. Studies by Wong and Penner found that women gain less automatic authority from formal dress than men do, often needing to put more effort into power dressing to achieve similar status perceptions. This reflects broader gender biases in how we interpret the same clothing cues differently, depending upon who's wearing them. What this body of research collectively suggests is that clothing formality isn't just about aesthetics or arbitrary social conventions. It has measurable impacts on cognitive function, behavioural tendencies, and social perceptions. Understanding these psychological mechanisms gives us useful tools for making more strategic choices about when formality might serve us well and when a more casual approach might be advantageous. Dress code matters, and when dressing for any occasion, you need to start with the dress code and then work within those parameters. The psychology of dress codes doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's always embedded in a broader cultural context that have shifted dramatically over time. Let's examine how our collective attitudes towards formality and casualness have evolved. For much of the 20th century, formal dress was the unquestioned default in professional environments. Men wore suits to offices. Women wore structured dresses or skirt suits, and deviations from these norms were rare and often penalised. The phrase "dress for success" emerged in this era, embodying the unambiguous connection between formal attire and professional achievement. But beginning in the 1990s, we witnessed what fashion historians call the casualisation of American dress code. This shift was partly driven by the emerging tech industry in Silicon Valley, where a new generation of leaders, like Steve Jobs, deliberately rejected traditional business attire in favour of casual alternatives. Famous Steve Jobs wears a black turtleneck and jeans, and this has become as much a signature as any tailored suit. What's fascinating about this shift is that it wasn't about comfort or convenience. It reflected changing social values. The movement towards casual dress coincided with a broader cultural shift towards valuing authenticity, individualism, and meritocracy over traditional hierarchies and conformity. In essence, casual dress became associated with creative thinking, whilst formal dress sometimes became viewed as stodgy or unimaginative. This cultural evolution accelerated dramatically with the COVID-19 pandemic, which forced nearly all of us to work from home. As Dr. Carolyn Mayer observed in her recent studies, this created what she called the Zoom shirt phenomenon, where people maintained a semblance of professional appearance on camera whilst wearing pyjama bottoms perhaps. This split-screen approach to formality versus comfort has permanently altered how many people think about workplace attire. Interestingly, research suggests that these attitudes towards dress codes often fall along generational lines. Studies found that baby boomers and Gen X are significantly more likely to associate formal dress with professionalism and competence, whilst millennials and Gen Z are more likely to view rigid dress codes as unnecessary barriers to inclusion and self-expression. What's emerging now as we navigate post-pandemic work environments and returning to the office is what fashion psychologists call contextual dressing. It's a more fluid approach where individuals adjust formality levels based on specific situations rather than adhering to fixed rules. This represents a more sophisticated understanding that different contexts call for different levels of formality, even within the same workplace or social sphere. Yet, even as casual dress has become more acceptable in traditionally formal environments, we are simultaneously formality nostalgic. We have a renewed appreciation for occasions that call for dressing up. We miss getting dressed up. The psychological value of formality and the significance it symbolises remains powerful. These cultural shifts remind us that dress codes are never static. They're always evolving expressions of collective values and social relationships. Understanding these broader trends helps us navigate dress code choices more thoughtfully, with awareness of both the historical weight that they carry and the contemporary signals they send. So, how can we apply these historical insights and the psychological research to our everyday clothing choices? Here are some practical strategies for you to navigate the formal-casual spectrum effectively. First, let's discuss what is known as strategic formality, the deliberate use of formal elements for specific psychological advantages. Based on the research I've mentioned, consider dressing more formally when you need to engage in abstract, big-picture thinking. You're facing situations requiring authority, or you need to establish credibility quickly. You're meeting someone for the first time in a professional context. You need to negotiate, or you need to advocate for yourself. You want to create psychological distance. This is useful in difficult conversations. Even in casual environments, incorporating just one formal element can significantly boost perception of competence whilst maintaining approachability. This formality anchor might be a structured blazer worn with jeans, a crisp button-down shirt with casual trousers, quality shoes paired with an otherwise relaxed outfit, or conversely, tailored trousers worn with trainers. If you work in a predominantly casual environment and occasionally need to project authority, fashion psychologist Dr. Dawn Karen recommends developing a formality gradient. This is a wardrobe that can be easily scaled up or down in formality with minimal changes. This approach allows for contextual flexibility without requiring complete outfit changes. Refer back to my episode on capsule wardrobes to help you with arranging your wardrobe like this. You can mix capsules so that you can easily integrate one formal item with another outfit. When incorporating elements of Black tailoring traditions into contemporary wardrobes, consider what fashion historians call meaningful details. These are small but significant elements that communicate intention and care. This might include well-maintained shoes. Research consistently shows that these are noticed and judged. A thoughtful accessory choice. Quality watches, distinctive cufflinks, carefully chosen jewellery. Precise fit. Properly tailored clothing at any formality level signals attention to detail. Wearing something that fits well makes a really big difference. Intentional colour choices. using colour psychology strategically. Research by Adam Galinsky suggests that wearing clothing with personal meaning, items connected to your values or identity, can provide psychological benefits regardless of formality level. This value-aligned dressing can help us feel more authentic even when we have to adhere to external dress code expectations. Perhaps most importantly, research from positive psychology suggests that, regardless of formality level, we experience the greatest psychological benefits from clothing when our outward presentation aligns with our authentic sense of self. This means that finding your personal balance between formal and casual isn't just about following external rules, it's about identifying what helps you feel most capable, comfortable, and genuinely expressed. What the historical traditions of black tailoring teach us is that formality doesn't have to mean conformity. It can be a canvas for profound self-expression and cultural pride. Similarly, casual dress doesn't have to mean carelessness. It can reflect thoughtful prioritization of comfort, functionality, and accessibility. The goal is not to choose permanently between formal or casual. You don't have to sit in one camp or the other, but to develop the sartorial intelligence to move confidently between them as different contexts and personal needs require. By understanding both the psychological impacts and the cultural meanings of these clothing choices, we gain greater agency in how we present ourselves and how we interpret the presentations of other people. So, as we wrap up today's exploration of dress code theory and the balance between formality and casualness, let's recap the insights we've discovered. So we began by examining the rich historical foundations of superfine black tailoring traditions that inspired this year's Met Gala theme. We learnt how meticulous attention to formal dress emerged not just as fashion, but as a powerful form of self-expression and cultural resistance, a way of asserting dignity and humanity in contexts of oppression. From W.E.B. Du Bois' immaculate three-piece suits to the creative innovations of black dandyism, these traditions show us how formality can be simultaneously respectful of convention and boldly expressive. And then next we explored the psychology of formal versus casual dress. Research by Seppian et al. Revealed that formal clothing enhances abstract thinking and cognitive processing, whilst Galinsky's work on enclothed cognition shows us how the symbolic meaning we attribute to clothing affects our psychological processes when we wear it. Studies consistently demonstrate that formal attire tends to increase perceptions of competence and authority, though these effects are always mediated by context and cultural expectation. We then trace the cultural evolution of dress code expectations from the rigid formality of the mid-20th century workplaces through to the casualization of movement sparked by the tech culture to the pandemic disruptions that created a new hybrid approach to professional attire. These shifts reflect broader changes in social values and generational attitudes towards self-expression and authenticity. Finally, we discussed the practical applications, how to strategically navigate the formal-casual spectrum in everyday life. We explored concepts like strategic formality, formality anchors, and the formality gradient as tools for making thoughtful dress code choices. We emphasise that the goal isn't adherence to arbitrary rules, but developing a sartorial intelligence that allows us to align our outward presentation with both contextual expectations and our authentic selves. What I hope you take away from this episode is a deeper appreciation for the psychological power of your clothing choices. Whether you're donning a perfectly tailored suit inspired by black dandyism traditions, or creating your own contemporary blend of formal and casual elements, your choices carry meaning. They affect how you think, how you're perceived, and how you experience yourself in the world. So as you open your wardrobe in the morning, remember that you're participating in a rich, ongoing conversation about identity, culture, and self-expression. The formal or casual aspect of what you choose isn't just about following or breaking rules. It's about communicating who you are and engaging thoughtfully with the psychological dimensions of dress. This week, try experimenting with your own formality gradient and pay attention to how different clothing choices affect both your inner experience and your social interactions. Thank you for listening to Style and Confidence, where style meets confidence for business success. If you have enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss out on our weekly confidence-building conversations. You can also connect with me over on LinkedIn as Claire Silk or on Instagram at Silk Style and Confidence for more style and mindset tips. Until next time, remember, true confidence comes from within. Style helps it shine.